Welcome, fans, to another edition of the Shooting from the Hip podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and I am joined, as always, by the Kingpin, the King of the Streets, Angel Medina. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good, brother, man. Just living the life, man. Enjoying my weekend off. It's Sunday. I always get excited to do the podcast with you, so that's a big plus in on my days when I do because I really don't do much. Just chill, work out. I'm still healing from my foot surgery, so can't really do much too much working out. But I'm just trying to stay active, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how's the rehab going in terms of the
Well,
stability?
Well, there's no rehab because I'm still in a cast. On October
Okay.
12th, I go in, get that taken off. Then they put a boot on me, which I do have. It's like one of those, when people bust their foot, they have that little big old plastic boot, that Frankenstein boot.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have to do like I think a week of still not weight bearing. And then the following week or 2 weeks after that, I do partial weight bearing. And then after that, full weight bearing. So
So what do you think the outside forecast will be in terms of your ability to return to in ring action? Because I know you're still in demand. You choose your spots, but definitely have a lot left in the tank still in terms of your in ring career.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm really working hard to get back. I really want to think that as soon as December hits, I'll be back at full action because again, I'm going to go to rehab and that's going to be every day. And like I said, it's definitely going to be work in progress. But the doctor says positively that I'll be back in the swing of things. I probably won't even notice that my partial fusion only when I step on even pavement, and that I'll notice it. So I still don't know how that will feel.
Well, we'll definitely keep on top of that and keep the fans
Hell
apprised
yeah.
as to how that is progressing for you. But today we have a very interesting topic. An individual that I know. Oh, here we here we go again. The run in is just modified a little bit. That's good, but it never fails to catch me off guard. Um, Now I forgot my train of thought. Anyway, back to my train of thought. Uh, as silly as that sounds, you have a number of experiences with this individual in the original ECW. He is without a doubt one of the most controversial characters to ever grace a wrestling ring, and we're looking at the topic today of why is it that New Jack Jerome Young never had a major run in either of the larger organizations, that being, of course, at the time WWF, WWE, and WCW. But before we get into the meat of that matter, can you speak on your initial impressions when you met New Jack?
Well, I mean, New Jack had a reputation that spoke for itself, and I heard a lot of stories in regards about how he was really like a violent and hard to work with individual, in wrestling. But to be honest, my first experience with New Jack was a pleasant one. That's why it's hard for me to like when he beat up on somebody or another story comes along. I never had that that perspective of him because he was never that way with me and DeVito, besides Grimes. But I mean, he was nice. He was still a thug. He still talked the thug talk, but he was never ever disrespectful. My first impression of him at the first time I met him was, yeah, I was a little nervous, because again, I didn't want to offend him, or set him off. But never, I mean, I just listened to him. He gave me advice, and he said we're going to have a good run with each other. Just listen to what I have to say, and keep pushing forward. So I mean, like I said, I was the new guy in ECW, so I'm going to follow his lead. And I guess since I did follow his lead, and I always like say, hey, what do you think of this? He was always like, oh, okay. Instead of say, hey, we're going to do this, I say, hey, I have a question. What do you think of this? And he'll say, hey, that's not a bad idea, or no, that's not a good idea. But he never said no to me. So even like, funny story, to bring it up is just I didn't realize I was kind of afraid of heights. I never really noticed that. But before the Danbury
Oh,
incident, we did a similar spot in some town at a house show, and it was 2 tiers. Not the I think it was 4 of them. It was just 2. So me and Jack climbed up there, and it was like when Jack hit me, all of a sudden the thing shook, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" And I fell on my knees, like on the bar, and I'm like, and Jack's like, "Okay, I'm gonna throw you off," and I'm like, "Fuck, Jack, I can't do it, man." I was a deer in headlights, and he just laughed. He goes, "Fuck it, just throw me off," and I threw him off, and DeVito landed on DeVito and Grimes. And he just laughed. When I went to the back, I said, "Bro, I didn't even know I was afraid of heights." But it's not afraid of heights. It was the instability, just like when you see when him and Vic Grimes did it. Because I was originally supposed to do that spot, and I told him, I said, if you could put a piece of plywood the same shape as that floor, so we can have some stability, I will take the suplex off the top of that top of those, scaffold, whatever you want to call it. When they came back to me and said, "Hey, we didn't have time to pick that up," that's when I said, "Hey, I'm not doing it." And that's when Grimes was right behind me. Where I was talking to Jack, he was like, "I'll do it," and that's how that story ended up with him and Jack. That's why it's all over the news and all. Jack's getting his revenge because of that situation. If I would have done it, totally different story that would have happened past that. You know,
mhm.
because once you
What?
committed, you committed. What?
Well, I was going to ask you that's something I've never heard before and fascinating for the historical record. But why in the world do you think Grimes would have you know volunteered, as you told it, to take? I mean, he was what outside minimum 325 pounds.
Yeah, but he was always known for doing crazy stuff, like diving outside the
Hmm.
ring when the guy he sits the guy in the chair, and then he dives outside the ring, and the guy moves and he crushes the chair. And it's been in ECW. He put it in the ring, dive off the top rope, and he'll pancake the chair. I always
Hmm.
told him, I said, "Bro, aren't you afraid? I mean, one day, yeah, I know you pancake the chair, but one day one of those legs is not going to give, and it's going to impale you." Never did, but I was always thinking like one day it's going to impale you. And he goes, "Nah, brother, it always collapsed." So I'm like, "All right, hey, that's your business." But he was always willing to take that. I mean, just crazy bumps off the apron to the floor to the ring. He was just. I'm not saying indestructible, but he was just that was his gimmick, to do crazy stuff like that. And we said, "Go have at it." You know, I was a safe one, meaning if I would do a high spot, as long as we sit there and really look at it and analyze it and do the math and say, okay, this is possible. This is how we're going to set the tables up, to make sure we land safely. If there's any hesitation in our thought process to do the spot, then the spot is not getting done. You know.
So then, given that that was his forte, so to speak, the crazy, outlandish, high risk situations. Did he ever explain to you why he, at that crucial moment, decided that um, he was in jeopardy and wasn't going to go for the spot as planned, especially since he volunteered for it?
The story he told me when I asked him what happened when Jack went to the jail, went to the hospital. I asked Vic right there and then. I said, at that spot, we knew it was supposed to be a suplex. That's the true story. It was supposed to be a suplex, and you fall through the tables. So I said, "Hey, what happened?" And he goes, "Oh, Jack." He said Jack was scared that he didn't want to take the bump, and Jack, then they both fell off. So I was like, okay, and I just took it with a grain of salt because again, Jack's in the hospital, everybody's going crazy about what happened and stuff. And what happened was the reason why Vic got heat with Jack, like I said, I remember it like yesterday. He said he kept telling like it was Jack's fault. It was Jack's fault. And Vic was still new and their loyalty went more to Jack. So when Jack found out like went back to Jack that he was getting blamed for the fuck up. And then the second part was that the original version was we were all supposed to be laid out. After that big spot, everybody was supposed to be carried out. Like oh my God, this is the most destructive. The ball, Kingpin Angel got hurt, DeVito got hurt, Vic Grimes falls, and Jack falls, and they're all carried out. There's not really a winner. If you watch the video, you don't see me and DeVito, but you see Vic Grimes hitting his head, and put, like, I'm okay. So he won't. Again, I'm not saying he wanted the glory, but he didn't follow directions. So then at that point, the guys thought he was trying to be a glory hound, that he was proud that he hurt Jack. Then he goes in the back and says Jack didn't want to go off the top, that he didn't have the commitment to it. And then when they got back to Jack, he was hot. And the only reason I know he was hot is because we were at the Burt Flickinger Center in Buffalo, New York. And the funny part is Vic was sitting behind me because it was a locker room. So it was two like lockers, like what you have, one behind the other. So I'm just leaning there tying my boots, and here comes Jack. And this is like weeks later, because he was in the hospital, he was healing, whatever. So then Jack walks in, and I stood up and said, "Hey, Jack, what's up, bro?" And he goes, "What's up, Ange?" And he just kept going past me. And then he just turned the corner, and I sat back down, and I was lacing up my boots, and they're just arguing. And I heard a big slap. And then I felt the lockers move behind me, and I stood up and I looked behind, and he's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you, man. You're fucking done." And and he's like, "Jack, why you gotta be like that?" And Jack took off. And then the story changed in regards to the ending, because Jack was gonna try to kill him in the ring. And Paul said, "Hey, when you hear New Jack's music, Vic, take off, take a powder. Angel will take the finisher." So when Jack was like cursing, and Jack was loading up the guitar with like, he put a iron in it, he put some pipes, he put a brick in it. He was stuffing it and taping it, and he put it like a lot of shit in it. He put a bowling pin in it. so then I remember I got to take the hit, and I said, "Hey, Jack, I need to talk to you." Paul said that once your music hits, that Vic is going to take the powder, and I'm taking the finisher. And Jack got livid. So he said, "Fuck that," and stuff. He went to Paul, started arguing with Paul, because he's like, because I didn't hear the conversation, but my thought pattern is like, "Man, you know what he did to me? Fuck that. I need to get my revenge." And Paul's like, "No, no, no." He comes back at me cursing and shit. And then I just said, "Jack, I totally understand, but can you do me a favor? Can you take out all that shit that you put in the guitar, because I'm taking the hit?" And he goes, "Yeah, don't worry, I got you." And everything was normal, But as soon as Jack music hit, boom, Vic Grimes just took out of the ring like a dart, So
Is that accurate, that the reports that during the time after the fall, immediately when Jack was in the hospital, that Grimes didn't bother to call and say, "How you doing?" Blah blah blah.
No, that's a true story, because at that time, I don't want to say, everybody had a cell phone, but it was different in the 90s. We had the Nokias and we had the Samsungs, and he didn't reach out to him. As far as I know, he didn't reach out. Even actually, did he call him? No. I reached out to Jack, to see how he's doing. I don't remember. I think DeVito did, but I can't guarantee it. And he was more upset because Jack said in the interviews that I would have accepted, because that's part of the business of me getting hurt. But for him not to reach out to me to see if I'm okay, plus the comments that he made, putting himself over, saying Jack was afraid to go off the top. And, that's, that got Jack's goat up, because, he's the original gangster, he's not afraid of anything. And, and then you putting it out there saying he was scared. Yeah, Jack got upset about that. So, and he told me he tried to kill him, huh?
Well, yeah. So then fast forward to the one of the areas that we're going to discuss a little bit down in terms of the content, but notable incidents. And I can't think of a more notable incident than that XPW situation where Jack and Grimes were there, and this is how the narrative goes. Jack made like everything was forgiven, blah blah blah, and then nailed Grimes with a couple of stun gun shots. Grimes says, "I can't feel my legs," and then tossed him off the scaffold and barely hit the ring. you must be fully aware of that particular incident. What were your thoughts on that when you heard about it? I know you weren't in XPW at the time, but do you think Jack was legitimately
Well,
trying to kill him?
no, I spoke to him about it, and I'm like, Jack, did you really try to kill him, man? And he goes, fuck yeah, I was trying. Like I said, don't bullshit me, I mean, because at that time, now me and Jack built a relationship, so we were cool. So I said, Jack, you really try to kill him? And he goes, yeah, man, I fucking try to kill him. I stun gunned the shit out of him. I said, bullshit, you didn't really try to kill him. He goes, yeah, man, I threw him, man. I was aiming for aiming for the turnbuckle when I threw him off. I'm like, all right, I believe you. I'm not saying you're lying, but I just didn't really think you were gonna do that. And he said, yeah, fuck that. I played it cool with him. I told him it was squashed, no problems. We worked until we got up to that top. And that's when I realized, that's when I knew that's when I was going to get him. I said, shit, and like I said, Jack is the type of person, like I said, it's so hard for me to say anything negative about him because me and him never had any issues. But from me seeing the stuff on the outside as a spectator of things happening, but when he comes to me, it was a totally to me and DeVito, really totally different attitude. We talked, we worked together, we agreed, disagreed. There was no hostility, but as soon as he finished talking to me and something was happening, it was like, what the fuck? Like it was a different beast, and I seen him do a lot of stuff that I'm like, but he liked me. He really liked me. He really liked DeVito, and we had good times. I guess that's why we just felt in that right mode with him and stuff. And I think that's the reason why if he would have went to WCW or WWE, he was very hard to control. And that's the thing. So he had his own opinions. And if he didn't like something that was coming across to him that put diminished his character or made him look not stupid, but just didn't make sense to him, he's going to voice his opinion and say, okay, we'll do that. But since he won't talk to you in a political way, he'll talk to you like man, fuck that, I ain't doing shit, nigga. Like that type of thing, and talking to Vince McMahon like that, it might not go well. But he was a guy from the street, so I think now he'd be able to control him, because I always heard those stories of a lot of interviews say he was very hard to control. That's why he was never in ROH. Think about it. If he couldn't go to WWE, he couldn't go to WCW, and ROH was still around. I mean, it was around. How come he couldn't go to ROH? He could have worked with Homicide. He could have worked with what was his what was his name? It's the black dude. He dressed the same way with Homicide. Oh my God! Now I'm getting a. But anyway, he was real dark. Always came to the ring with a cigar. He wore a bandana to the side.
Yeah. Not Cheeseburger though.
No, not Cheeseburger. He was. I'll find out. We could still talk, and I'll find out.
So okay, so you've got the XPW issue, you've got the mass transit deal, and then later in his career, you had the 2004 stabbing of the Hunter Red wrestler in Florida that he actually, ended up looking at some serious time, but got out of it. And then just recently, I read that he had an incident in 2006 at the former ECW arena where he assaulted someone on the arena staff over a mix-up between asking for a Sprite and getting a 7-Up. So these high-profile incidents can contribute directly to his controversial reputation that you touched on: unscripted violence, in and out of the ring, risky choice for a major promotion. But we've had in the industry many individuals with controversial reputations. They've been involved in significant incidents that don't put the wrestler in a particularly positive light. But do you think the accumulation of these incidents, do you think that really was a major impediment to him getting signed, despite the fact that there have been, if we're honest, there have been a lot of I don't want to say unsavory characters, but individuals with some reputations of note?
The problem is with Jack, and again, that's not a problem. It's just called diplomatic to be able to talk to him at his level. And I'm not saying it's a stupid level or it's a smart level. It's just, like the right level to talk to him. And I mean, Jack is the type of dude, like I said, he is just I can't never say he was a difficult person to work with. Only from the perspective from him with other people, he had those issues. So, I mean, it was just his attitude that was hindering him to go to that next level with everybody else. And like I said, he was very hard to control. And I'm not saying like, oh, they can control you. It's just he's not receptive to feedback, good, negative feedback. No, we can't do this, we can't do that. He just doesn't like that. So that's the thing. I mean, like I said, he could have made a lot of money if he would have just tamed himself a little bit, just to make that money, but he was just too street. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely shoot elements of him as a person, and that's what we've heard from other ECW originals, that the Jack that you saw on TV was the Jack that you got. So that's a situation. One of the issues that we're discussing today is terms of Jack and politics. He wasn't a politicker, and he was very
No.
straightforward in terms of, this is what I see makes sense for me, and if you don't like it, basically go F yourself, which isn't going to get him over with major companies, so to speak.
Especially, yeah, with promoters, with bookers. I mean, it was just not, especially if you didn't know him, and that's the first impression. Remember, it's always the perception, and when you first meet up with the boss, that's what's going to happen. So yeah, Jack was just, he's not really to change with the times, and I think that's what hindered him. Because like I said, I know he told me a story that he spoke to Vince. He went there one time and he spoke to Vince, and it didn't really go well. Nothing bad, nothing crazy, but just the way Jack was talking, saying that they were just not vibing in regards of who he was, and they knew they couldn't. He says it in tons of interviews. They knew they couldn't control him, and when they can't control you, then that's not somebody that they want in their locker room. Because I could see Jack fighting with the Undertaker. I could see, like, the stories like the Miz, like, hey, you dropped fried chicken on my bag, and they big. I mean, think about it. If that was Jack eating fried chicken, and the guy's like, hey, you dropped some crumbs on my bag. I can't believe you did. Jack be like, man, fuck you. Fuck you and your bag. Don't be talking to me like that. I could just hear him. That would just set him off, and stuff.
What about the criticism, if you want to call it this, notwithstanding his incredible charisma and presence, he wasn't exactly a Kurt Angle in the ring in terms of technical skill. Basically, the match that Jack had was the match that Jack had across across time. So he didn't really he was never a catch as catch can grappler in the style of Lou Thez or Carl Gotch or whatnot, but worked his particular style, and that was it. Do you think that limited him, that he wasn't able to be more diverse?
Well, it's kind of hard because when you start going with that type of scenario, then you got to look at, what about Bruiser Brody? What about Abdullah the Butcher? What about Dirty Dick Slater? Certain individuals that were just not like high flyers, or you know what I mean? I mean, I know Dick Murdoch would take a hip toss, but again, Abdullah the Butcher, that was the same thing, kind of one dimensional. Bruiser Brody, yeah, he was a great worker, but he was a little bit one dimensional. The big boot, smash, going around the arena, hitting each other with garbage cans. So that's kind of hard, because if they could make money with you, like I said, they made money with Abby, and like I said, he couldn't do much, besides clawing your forehead and all that bullshit, and
With the fork.
yeah, with the fork and going around the arena, and he made a killing. So Stan Hansen. I'm not saying Stan Hansen is horrible. I'm just saying, but when you watch his matches, it's the same thing. Ooh, lariat, big boot, turnbuckle, elbow. You know what I mean? But you didn't see anything spectacular, like, oh my God. Besides, he broke Bruno Sammartino's neck. I mean, that's the only thing. I mean, that's his home. I'm not saying claim to fame, but if you have a little bit of bragging rights, shit, I broke Bruno Sammartino's neck, even if it was by accident. I did it on purpose, the lariat, So
Mhm.
that's what I'm saying. So I don't think Jack being that type of wrestler was holding him back. That's just my perspective because of other people who did the similar besides throwing the garbage cans in the ring, but a similar style that they
Mhm.
were making
Mhm.
money. But think about it, you never saw Jack in Japan.
Mhm.
You know
Why
what I
was
mean?
that? I always wondered that. Did you ever ask him
No,
why he never
no, I
got
never
booked
asked
in
him.
Japan? Or
No,
no?
I never asked him. I'm just curious because I mean, if, like I say, he's that popular. The Japanese people would have loved him, especially doing all those crazy spots and stuff. But maybe he couldn't leave the country, he couldn't get a
Mm,
passport. I mean,
mm,
I don't know how that
mm,
works, but
mm.
I just think that I'm pausing for a sec. No, that's homicide. I'm still looking for that picture of that dude. Anyway, but yeah, it's just that's the situation. It's just that Jack, yeah, I never saw Jack in Japan, never saw Jack in Australia, never heard Jack went to England. Dude, he stayed in the States, but you never heard him going overseas,
Yeah,
right?
must have been a legal issue. I'm bringing up a comment from Matthew Holland who said that New Jack killed the fat kid. What I find interesting about this, of course, we're talking about the mass transit incident with Eric Koulos, who I guess was about 400 pounds and 17 years old, and asked Jack to cut him, which he obliged, and went quite deep, and he had to be taken out. And seek medical attention. But two of the very last tweets that Jack sent, he was asked about mass transit, and he said that he doesn't feel any remorse or didn't feel any remorse for that situation, and the kid ate himself to death and died many years later. So he
Yeah,
was still
he
not
died.
remorseful.
He died of a gastric bypass surgery.
Yeah.
Also, I did find a picture of that dude, but I can't remember his name. But he's right there. He was in ROH with, but I keep forgetting his name.
Wow, you got me.
Yeah, he used to come to the ring. Ruckus.
Oh,
Now
yeah.
it hit. Now it hit me. Ruckus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, like I had to bring that up. I mean, I don't know why I brought it up, but it's just I couldn't remember the name. It was Ruckus. That's the dude.
Well, and that sucks when you can't recall that. What about the issue of the whole hardcore thing back in the period of time, the late '90s? ECW, they were pioneering that. Money was being made in very, very, very watered down versions of hardcore in WWF and WCW. They each had their own championship. Do you think the fact that he was in the era of sports entertainment, family friendly programming, which ECW was not? Do you think that reputation for being a hardcore competitor held him back?
I don't think so. I really. I mean, it's just so hard no, no. I don't think that will hold him back. I don't see that. I mean, that's just that's like I said. Jack had a lot to offer. You know what I mean? And a lot of guys try to, it was that philosophy. You can't be duplicated, something like that. Like I
Often
mean,
imitated, never duplicated.
yeah. I mean, it's just the thing is, I'm not knocking homicide. I'm not saying that, but I mean, apples and oranges. Same style, same look. Ruckus, same style, same look. I mean, it's just that yeah, the hardcore style. I mean, Public Enemy and all the. I mean, same thing. I mean, it was just I think his attitude. It was not because of his style. It's not because of his look. It was because his attitude towards people was not, taken, with a positive understanding. And I think that's what was killing him. It was just his attitude.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, and if you look at who we can name off the top of our head that had runs in WWF and WCW, Sabu, he tamed his style somewhat. Sandman, same thing, gave him a new name. And then you look at some of the Taz going to the WWF, he basically was extremely watered down and neutered. Dudley Boys, kind of undecided on that. I think they were pretty much allowed for whatever reason to remain
The same.
intact, yeah, from their ECW run. But maybe if Jack had have been more amenable to something similar, not saying that he becomes a I don't know, ice cream truck driver or some goofy character like that, but if he, would have been more amenable to modifying his approach, his style, his character, what have you, that would have mitigated some of that hardcore concern, because many of his peers ended up getting signed by the big two.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, and if you look at like Hack and I mean, he drank. I mean, he did gimmicks. I mean, there was guys in there like Sabu. Nothing negative. I'm just saying, like, I mean, it's just I guess they were easy to work with. They knew how to play the game and work the system. And Jack was just trying to keep it real. Keep it 100, like they say on the streets, and it was just not working for him.
And given the fact that the wrestling business is one that is not, how do I say, immune to scandal, or very accepting of scandal. We look back at some of the public relation nightmares of the past, such as Sheik and Duggan being caught in the same car with the marijuana at the time, which was so verboten, and the cocaine in the Sheik's bag. Do you think companies, notwithstanding the fact that this man clearly had the ability to draw and make money for a company, do you think the public relations aspect of having a man like him on the roster and that potentiality for the unpredictable behavior, which would cause incidents of a high profile nature, do you think that really killed him as well?
Yeah, I mean, especially the thing is that, yeah, if Jack was on the outside after a show, it would have been a PR nightmare, because there was some things, things that happened that, would have caused, like in the movies where we got to cover this up, we got to make it go away like it never happened, and think about it. I remember one time in North Carolina, we were working out in the ring, and I still remember, like, again, like it was yesterday. And there was these guys that came in to try out to work out in the ring to see what they can do. And I was sitting outside in the seats where the fans sit, and Jack was sitting over there. He wasn't sitting next to me, but he was on the other side, just chilling, eating, whatever. And the guy was wrestling, and the kid looked decent, and he was trying to work the crowd. The crowd that was supposedly imaginary be there. And he saw Jack, and he said, "What are you looking at, boy?" And oh, dude, and then Jack, that's everybody. He looked around, and he looked at me, and he's like, "Did he call me boy?" And I just, I never say no. I just give him the look, like, like that. So then Jack got up and left. I went to the locker room to start kind of getting ready, and I'm sitting in the chair, and the kid was sitting next to me because his bag was there. And Jack came right through into the locker room and just drilled this kid in the face. And he fell into a clothes rack and passed me, and Jack is just pounding the shit out of him. And I remember, "You calling me boy? Who the fuck are you calling me boy?" and stuff. And Jack beat the brakes off him, and we threw the kid out, and and he goes, "That motherfucker had the audacity to call." I said, "Well, Jack, he was just he was working the match." And he goes, "I'm not the one to fuck with. If he was going to work, he should have done it to you, but I don't play that, calling me boy, especially in South Carolina, and so see, like that." So, if you could visualize the same scenario in WWE, and people were there working and cutting promos and doing a match when no fans are there, and the guy just looks at Jack and calls him boy, and then Jack, that happened in the WWE locker room. You know what I mean? That's major lawsuit, liability, all that crazy shit.
Mm-hmm. And this was before WWE was a publicly traded company as well, and they were still that sense of that. That's an interesting segue you bring up. talk about notable incidents. When he got into the ring with 72-year-old
Gypsy Joe.
Gypsy Joe in one of the southern states that escapes me, he it seemed to be a real trigger for him in terms of disrespect, be it from another worker or the crowd, because apparently there were some real rednecks in that crowd. And he was quoted one time as saying, even before that match, he said, "I thought that they were using the N word, and I thought that was my name. That's how much they were using it." Did he ever share with you how the whole issue of respect? Because it sounds like he was somewhat of a, I won't say a mentor, but he had a good relationship with yourself, because you are by nature a respectful individual. But did he ever get into that, about how that really set him off? That
The Gypsy Joe situation?
Well, just in context of the Gypsy Joe situation, how the disrespect from both a wrestler that he was working with and the crowd, really, that video, I'm sure you've seen it as well, where he beat the brakes off him with a bat. It's incredible, actually.
And again, I spoke to Jack about that scenario, and I asked him. The story was that, like I said, you got to approach Jack in like a certain way, and people just always approached him the wrong way. And the reason why I know is he said that Gypsy Joe was like, "I've been in the business this many times, kid, just hang with me, I'll show you what to do. We're gonna do this and we're gonna do that." And Jack's like, "Oh, okay, this guy is disrespecting me." So it was just that Gypsy Joe, again, I don't know, this is Jack's version, that Gypsy Joe just didn't realize, this Jack's been in the business for quite a while, and he's telling Jack, "This is what we're gonna do. I don't sell because I'm supposed to be indestructible. I'm known to absorbing a lot of pain, so I don't sell." So see, and then Jack's like, it just got Jack hot. And that's what happened in the ring with the Gypsy Joe situation. And like I said, the thing is that you have to approach Jack in a more diplomatic way in regards to like, "Hey, Jack, I have this idea. Tell me if you think it's stupid. If you don't think it's a good idea, we can just take it off." If you approach it like a question, he was more adamant to take it than, he won't take it as an insult. "Hey, man, hey, I have this idea, and I think it may work. What do you think? Yeah, I just want your opinion. You think we can do that?" "Oh, yeah, we could do that," And like I said, I suggested a lot of things to Jack, and it just, never had an issue. But that's how I approached it. It's just how you gotta like read the people that you're in the room with, and know how to bring up a conversation and know not to offend them. Because Jack was the type of guy that, man, like, just like the Joe Pesci character. "What do you mean funny? Funny how?" It's the truth. If you go, "Man, dude, like if you said, man, boy, you a trip, man. I can't believe you, man. You just a trip, man. Boy, you make me laugh." 20 minutes later, in that whole conversation, he said, "Man, you call me boy? What you mean by calling me boy?" He will just dissect the conversation. And especially if he doesn't know you or like you, then he sits there and thinks, and then that's how he goes off. So, and like the kid he stabbed with the knife, with the thing. I don't know what the fuck guy's name is, but it was the
Hunter
same.
Red.
Yeah, and it was the same thing. It was the same thing. Now, and like I said, all those incidences, the Vic Grimes, the Gypsy Joes, that dude, the kid in South Carolina, the locker room incident with Vic Grimes, mass transit incident. Those things get back to Vince, and we can't. That's a liability. That's lawsuits. That's because you're representing the company, and they're going to go after the company. They're going to sue you, and then they're going to sue the company. And I think that's what made people scared. They didn't want that liability. There's like, he's a great wrestler, but he ain't that great. Like Apollo Creed talking to him, "You're a good fighter, but I'm great." When he told Rocky in the ring, "You fight great, but I'm a great fighter." Like that. So that's the thing. So they just don't want. I can't speak for them, but from my perspective, sitting back looking at it, they didn't want the hassle or the headache to deal with any type of litigation of something that he has done or done after the fact. You know, because no matter what once you go to a hotel room and you don't, you still represent the company, and it's still going to come back to them. So they didn't want that. I just see that they didn't want that problem. You know.
Yeah. What about when you look at the you look at, there's only so many spots in the big two at the time, and you had a period where, you know, there was just a wealth of talent, like Hall of Famers, incredible wrestlers, multifaceted guys that could, do the job in the ring, but cut great promos. They were just a total package. Not speaking about Luger necessarily, but what do you think about the fact that there was just so much competition for roster spots around that period of time that he was in his heyday? Do you think he could have stood, or that hurt him that he didn't get a spot because of, there were so many others that were more than a one-dimensional thug character? Not saying necessarily that he was, but just talking about perception from those in the hiring capacities.
Jack could cut a great promo, and you know that. And I think, like I said, I could sit here and sit back and go, you know what? I could see Jack being part of, not saying part of, but one of those individuals in Crime Time. You know, but knowing Jack, he'd be like, man, I'm not a circus animal. You're stereotyping me. You more money. And dollar. I just could see Jack say, no, that's not me. I'm not a circus animal jump through hoops. And, but I could see something like that being part of Jack's gimmick, because, it falls in that same criteria. But I don't know. It's just so hard to tame somebody and come across to him to say, hey, if you could just tone it down a little bit, even though there was spots available. Like I said, there was not a lot of spots, especially when ECW and WCW folded. So you really had to make a great impression to get a spot. I mean, really like blow their socks off. So that window of opportunity was really, really, really small and narrow. So there was so many individuals out there that they could handpick and just say, we could make our own new Jack, and he'll be more, we can control him better. And I'm not saying anything negative to individuals that are in the ring. Like I said, Crime Time, that's the only thing that pops in my head. I'm not saying that but they're businessmen, and they're able to talk, and they're able to understand what it is about making money. If they were like, hey, we want you to do this, they'd be like, okay, we'll do it. So, they're looking at the long-term investment of making money. Jack was the type of person he more cared about, in my perspective, that what his image, and he's not going to change for nobody. So again, that's just if Jack was alive, he'll probably say something different, but I'm just going off from the person I know. Like I said, I mean, Jack was an awesome wrestler. He never hurt me. From all the spots we did, he always put his body in peril to protect me. Never broke a bone, never busted my lip, besides being stabbed in the butt with a fork and pouring hot sauce down up my nose by accident. But those are accidents. And he even apologized. He laughed, but he apologized. So he didn't have to apologize. I didn't go, hey, Jack, you need to apologize. He came to me, bro, are you all right? And just start laughing. Dude, I'm sorry, man. And knowing me, I always take things with a grain of salt, because I know he didn't do it intentionally. So I just laugh with him. I'm like, man, you killing me. But if it was anybody else that he didn't like, he would be like, fuck him. So I'm just saying, it's just Jack was just trying to keep it real to himself. And that's what would have hindered him. Especially, like I said, when there was not many spots available, they didn't want the headache to invest so much time in him, to whatever gimmick, whatever they wanted to do to fire him, to go, that's 8 weeks of wasted time that we could have put our efforts into somebody else.
TV time. This is an interesting comment from Chaz Seamus 28, which I wanted to ask you about, who said he still saw a lot of New Jack's ideas in the Attitude Era, though, through the shopping cart and the Dudley Boys cameo. I believe I read or saw or heard a couple of interviews where Jack was calling out the Dudley Boys in particular for appropriating his gimmick and profiting off it. Do you have any knowledge of that heat there?
I heard of it. I never spoke to him about it. But I think I saw it in an interview where he's like, everybody's stealing my gimmick, like, we just made that comment, off of, imitated but never duplicated philosophy, and that's what I think he was doing that for RF Video. If I remember that was the interview, and he was pretty hot about it, that they were, stealing his camouflage because he's the one that was wearing camouflage in the ring. So I mean, yeah, but he don't have copyright for, what I mean. He doesn't own the rights to that type of outfit. So that was pretty hard, But I mean, like I said, Jack was he was a colorful individual. Like I said, as the years went on, he was, I hate saying that. I don't want to say slow. That's not the right thing. When we did a show together in Philadelphia, he was not the same person. He was really mellow. Like back in the days, hey Jack, what's going on, brother? Man, what's going on? Hey, how you doing? When I saw him that time, years later after the incident, he was like, hey Jack, what's going on? I'm doing good. And he would just stay there quiet, like, and I remember saying, Jack, you all right? And he goes, yeah, man, I'm good. And I think that head injury was really affecting him. Because again, I know it was like two different individuals. Like I say, he was fine. It's just that he was more talkative and more outgoing back then. And this one, he was just sitting there just mellow. And when he talked to you, it was just like, yeah, I'm good, man. Like that.
Was that Extreme Rising, that company?
We were doing not Extreme Rising, the wrestling. It was a documentary. It was a documentary, and they did a show, Wrestling with Disaster. It was a documentary we did, and I never saw the video, but and then we had the show, and then we had an autograph signing. It was me, DeVito. I mean, I have the pictures. I just don't remember the name of the but it wasn't Extreme Rising. It was something else. I can't remember.
Yeah, because I do remember that company that was trying to get off the ground. They were using both Jack and Mustafa, and they weren't happy with the way that they were being used there. They were essentially being used to put over another tag team, and that was one of the comments at the time that Jack had really slowed down. And you of course saw the Dark Side of the Ring episode the past season, and that was one of the things that really struck me, was compared to his interviews, etc. in the past, he was at about 1/4 half speed, and that of course probably is, as you pointed out, due to that traumatic brain injury and the accumulation of the numerous blows that he took during his career.
Yeah. It was called Wrestling with Disaster. Sabu was on it. Barbarian. Yeah, I remember that. It's just been such a long time, but I remember it was a documentary. But like I said, never saw the time of day. I never saw the finished product. But it's been a long time, so I can't remember all the individuals that was there. Anyway.
So this kind of dovetails nicely into one of the final areas that might have held him back. Jack was a bit older than some of his contemporaries, and he worked that hardcore style, had the horrific injuries. Do you think by the time he really got because his time in the spotlight really was relatively short with ECW. I know he did Smoky Mountain before and did some XPW, et cetera, but by the time he was in a position where he could have transitioned into one of the major companies, do you think he was just too far past his prime and too many accumulated injuries?
And that's true. I mean, he was older than me, and I think Jack I'm 51. I think Jack is like 57.
I think he died when he was 57. Yeah,
Something like that. And
2021.
yeah, and that's again, remember, you don't want to. I hate saying it because it's just so hard for, but I'm just going from people seeing it. Like you don't want to get a thoroughbred with a lame leg. You know, you see Biscuit using that example. You don't want a horse that's way past his prime that has all these injuries, and you're not going to invest all this money for a person that is hurt all the time and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that could be also be a factor in regards of why you know he was not picked up. But again, he had a lot of serious injuries. He was born in '63.
And he died in 2021.
May 14th of 2021. So
yeah.
Jack was at he was 58.
58.
So
wow.
so I'm 51. So 21, 22, 23, 58, 59. He would have been 60.
Mm-hmm.
60 on January 3rd. So yeah, this time around he would have been 60. So yeah, man. I mean, it's just sad. Like I said, he was a good dude, man. Like I said, I can't say anything bad about him because he always took care of me. But from the perspective of seeing what things that happened to him with other individuals, yeah, it's two different people.
So as we wrap up this discussion, I think the major point or takeaway from this is, notwithstanding the fact that Jack did not have that run in either WWF or WCW, where I think it's important also to note that just taking the WWF for example, they could have, had he been willing, they could have taken him and changed him into before we went on air, we were talking about Tony Anthony becoming TL Hopper and Tracy Smothers becoming Freddie Joe Floyd, in these ridiculous caricatures, especially in the pre-Attitude era. But say that for what it is, there's no guarantee that his run in either company would have been representative of who he was and what he could do given the limitations. But do you think ultimately the fact that he did not have a major run in any way hurts his legacy as one of the most memorable, whatever measuring stick you want to apply to it, the man, we're still talking about, I think generations down the line are going to be talking to him. Does it in any way hurt his legacy?
No. Jack's legacy is intact. He will always be remembered as the most hardcore, most controversial wrestler in the business. People are going to be talking about him for years to come. I mean, he surpassed a lot of guys in regards of the style that he has, the individual. He was one of a kind. So people are going to remember him. Like I said, there's a lot of people imitating him, imitating the style, imitating, they had to get it from somewhere. And I just think that Jack didn't have nothing to worry about. Like, there's some wrestlers that, like, that never made it to WWE, and they're legendary. Look, I still remember Cheetah Master. I still remember Reckless Youth. I mean, it's just dirty. Like I said, Dirty White Boy. I remember him. He didn't make it to those big moments. But so yeah, I mean, they have their they're in the brains of a lot of people, man. They niched a little carving in wrestling history to always be remembered as one of the pioneers of pro wrestling. So people will remember them. I mean, like myself, yeah, I didn't make it to the big leagues, but that's why you have videotapes. That's why you have highlights. People will always remember you. You're immortalized when you see, like, you're immortalized on TV. You're immortalized on this podcast, because once the person's gone, you can still review and see it. So there's going to be people seeing New Jack from years to come.
Yeah, and I think the counter argument to that would be that the fact that he was unwilling to compromise, he knew he was the original gangster. He wasn't going to take shit from a promoter or water himself down. I think the fact that he stayed true to that to the end and we mean the very end, like his last tweets, that only serves to cement his legacy and his unforgettable nature even more so. When you look at some of the individuals that completely got lost in the shuffle and degraded in WWF, I guess in WCW too, but I keep going back to the WWF thinking of, for example, they took a great athlete and performer like Terry Taylor and turned him into the Red Rooster. That he will never, ever wash off, whereas Jack will be Jack.
Yeah. Like I said, I remember him doing the head bob, and I was like, but it was work, man. But I mean, that's the problem. He will always be known as the Red Rooster. But I remember him as, Terry Taylor, he's in a suit, the computerized man.
Yeah, when he was part of the York Foundation, when he tried to rehab and he had a tag with the Hammer. Yeah, for sure. But I think to his credit, I admire people that have values and ethics, and whatever they are, and not saying that he was always 100% on point with everyone, but New Jack was New Jack, and he stuck to those values to the end.
No, absolutely. Jack always kept it real.
So, fans, we were going to have Chilly Willy on this podcast, but unfortunately, he is 12 hours difference from us, and he's living in the Philippines. What was that?
Fuck him.
Oh, here we go. We're building the angle. A lot of the fans want to see Willie on the show to interact with Angel, and we will have him back on this show, or on the show period sometime, along with the run-in again.
My man Joe Boo.
But that never fails to be a distraction. I like it. So
this is my favorite. This is my favorite. I love this. It's the greatest gift I ever had. I even got the shot of rum. So nobody drinks Joe Boo's rum. So
it's over too. The fans love it too. But before we go, just want to get your final thoughts on this topic, and what can we expect in the future episodes of this podcast. I have a couple of comments, but just your final thoughts on Jerome Young, New Jack, rest in peace.
Oh man, like I said, my final thoughts with Jack is he was the most like I said, giving person for me. Helped me out a lot. He was funny, he was controversial, and like I said, man, I always had a good relationship with everybody in the ECW locker room, and Jack was one of them. And when he died, it bothered me, but I mean, he lived hard, he rode hard, it caught up with him, but he was like, fuck it, I mean, he drank heavy, he did Jack did Jack, and he knew what he was doing to himself was harmful, but he accepted it, and I mean, he embraced it. And like I said, Jack was a great guy, man. I owe my career, I owe the Kingpin character to that level because of him. So he'd be greatly missed. He was a good dude.
Yep, 100%. A true original and a true legend in his own right. Fans, we've come to the end of this edition of the Shooting from the Hip podcast with the Kingpin, the King of the Streets, Angel Medina. I'm Jack Kilby. You're going to want to stay tuned. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to thehannibaltv.com. That way you're going to keep up to date as to all the programs that we have upcoming, all the shoot interviews that the fans have grown to love, as well.
And you got a big show coming up too, November.
Yes, we do. On November the 4th in Renfrew, Ontario, the Renfrew Reckoning will feature the return of Rene Dupree, multi-time WWE Tag Team Champion, to not only Great North Wrestling, but the Ottawa Valley, in the first defense of Magnum McLaren, my man, the Canadian champion, part of the Big Money Players, his title, and much, much more. So please stay tuned. We're going to keep you updated as to all the developments with Great North Wrestling and this channel. But until next time, thanks for tuning in. And
thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.